In this podcast episode, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shares a profound analysis of America's growing health crisis, focusing on the pervasive rise of chronic diseases, the food industry's role in shaping national dietary guidelines, and the regulatory capture that has compromised public health standards. He also discusses innovative dietary approaches, the pharmaceutical industry's pricing practices, environmental toxins, and controversies surrounding government programs and policies impacting health and nutrition. Alongside, he reflects on personal health practices and broader societal challenges in addressing these issues. Kennedy highlights that despite unprecedented convenience, Americans are the sickest population globally, with the highest rates of chronic diseases such as diabetes, obesity, autoimmune illnesses, and autism. He points out that today, 77% of American teens are ineligible for military service due to health conditions, a stark change from previous generations. The health system now spends over $4 trillion annually on chronic disease care, consuming nearly 40% of federal dollars. He emphasizes that healthcare reform efforts, like Obamacare or single-payer plans, are insufficient without addressing the root epidemic of diet-induced chronic illness fueled by ultra-processed foods. The conversation explores how, from the mid-1990s, tobacco companies pivoted into the food industry amid impending regulation, using their expertise in addiction to make foods more addictive through salt, sugar, and chemical additives. These ultra-processed foods hijack the public's appetite and metabolism, leading to obesity and metabolic damage. Kennedy discusses industry capture of regulatory agencies like the FDA, where regulatory bodies effectively became puppets for the heavily lobbied food and pharmaceutical industries. This capture allowed thousands of untested, chemically laden ingredients, many far exceeding Europe's 400 approved additives, to flood the American food supply unchecked under loopholes like GRAS, generally recognized as safe. The famous food pyramid is described as another casualty of industry influence. Kennedy reveals that it was distorted by companies like Procter & Gamble and organizations funded by soda and processed food manufacturers to vilify fats and proteins without solid science. This skewing pushed American diets toward refined carbohydrates and ultra-processed foods, which now compose 70% of children's caloric intake. He recounts his recent efforts to overhaul the dietary guidelines by assembling top nutritionists to create evidence-based, simplified recommendations emphasizing eat real food. The new guidelines aim to eliminate processed products like sugary cereals being promoted as healthful staples. The influence of dietary guidelines reaches far beyond individual choices, dictating government food subsidies, school lunches, military meals, and programs like SNAP. Kennedy explains how huge sums of federal money, roughly $45 million daily from USDA alone, are allocated towards subsidized food purchases. He shares examples of reform efforts led by celebrity chef Robert Irvine to improve military base food, highlighting that soldiers were avoiding subpar meals and spending their own limited funds on fast food. Improvements in sourcing and cooking smarter meals demonstrate that nutritious food can be affordable and scalable within existing budgets. Kennedy details his own approach to health, revealing a strict carnivore diet supplemented with fermented foods like sauerkraut and yogurt, followed to combat visceral fat diagnosed through MRI imaging. After 30 days, he reports significant reductions in fat and resolution of heart arrhythmias. He also shares his lifelong dedication to fitness, incorporating varied weightlifting routines and a brand-associated penchant for cold plunging in jeans as a lighthearted motivational act. His discipline and tailored health strategy illustrate the personalized nature of combating chronic disease. Turning to pharmaceuticals, Kennedy outlines landmark initiatives under former President Trump to reduce exorbitant drug costs through most favored nation pricing, aligning U.S. drug prices with lower European rates. He discusses the onshoring of drug manufacturing to reduce dependence on foreign supply chains, a national security concern revealed during the COVID-19 pandemic. These moves resulted in significantly lowered drug prices for American consumers and increased domestic production capacity, demonstrating a rare bipartisan achievement with tangible patient benefits. The episode tackles the contentious subject of glyphosate herbicide use, glyphosate's centrality to U.S. agriculture, and the dilemmas facing regulatory authorities. Kennedy expresses disappointment in recent executive orders favoring the industry's production and granting immunity against lawsuit claims, highlighting the precarious balance between national food security and public health concerns. He underscores farmers' financial struggles and the urgent need for sustainable alternatives, pointing to promising technologies like laser weed control that reduce pesticide use and increase productivity promisingly. Kennedy exposes massive fraud within Medicaid and Medicare programs, detailing how billions are siphoned off by fraudulent medical equipment companies, hospice services run by criminal enterprises, and abuse of home care and disability programs. He recounts specific examples involving stolen patient IDs and inflated claims, illuminating a largely unreported drain on taxpayer resources. Furthermore, he criticizes the Biden administration's alleged directive curtailing fraud enforcement in favor of increased program enrollment, exacerbating systemic inefficiencies. Addressing infant nutrition, Kennedy reveals the outdated nature of U.S. infant formula regulations, unchanged since 1998, and ongoing efforts to scrutinize formulas for heavy metals, pesticides, and PFAS contamination. He stresses the critical importance of breastfeeding when possible, but insists on the need for safe, science-based formula standards to protect infants during brain and body development. The discussion turns to electromagnetic fields, where Kennedy affirms overwhelming scientific evidence that current FCC guidelines fail to protect the public, as they only address thermal effects rather than DNA damage or neurological impacts. He advises practical precautions for parents, such as avoiding phone proximity to the head, especially during sleep, and expresses concern over widespread unpaid health risks from everyday wireless devices. Kennedy comments on regulatory shifts affecting peptides and hormone therapies, noting a crackdown on compounded peptides driven underground by administration changes. He differentiates GLP-1 receptor agonists, now more accessible and affordable, from black market peptide sales, urging consumers to be cautious and seek products from regulated manufacturers to ensure efficacy and safety. Despite long-standing friendships across political divides, Kennedy reflects honestly on the lack of congeniality inside government, with ideological battles often overshadowing cooperative policymaking. He laments how health issues become unnecessarily partisan, even though children's well-being should unite all sides. The SNAP waiver controversy, illustrating resistance to banning unhealthy subsidized purchases in blue states, exemplifies the difficulties in separating politics from common sense health interventions. Kennedy offers insights into growing up within a powerful, service-oriented family and how those experiences shaped his worldview. He discusses his wife's contrasting dietary habits, which require culinary compromises, and shares personal wellness rituals practiced together, highlighting the balance of differences within their relationship. The podcast touches on cultural moments, such as Kennedy's viral gym jeans trend, started as a convenience and grown into a quirky brand symbol encouraging exercise, and food recommendations like Terry Black's barbecue. These lighter touches humanize the broader serious themes discussed. Ultimately, Kennedy expresses hope that ongoing reforms and awareness campaigns will significantly reduce America's chronic disease burden within the coming years. His commitment centers on fostering a movement that transcends political divisions to restore health, rebuild trust in regulatory bodies, and empower families to make real food and lifestyle choices grounded in science and common sense.